order, and they must be told so in no unequal terms, Mr. Speaker. You cannot write to an institution barely a few hours before they are sitting to inform them of a travel, I don't know to which part of the world, traveling to whatever part of the country, accompanying whoever, including the President, Mr. Speaker, is not the business of this House. What we have in this House, Mr. Speaker, is business that has been brought by the people of Kenya through their representatives. We are not calling the two CSs, Mr. Speaker, to engage them in idle talk. These are issues that the representatives of the people feel need to be answered, Mr. Speaker. And many of these questions, you know, Mr. Speaker, have been on the order paper for quite a while. I would certainly want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that Nakumincha and Alfred Mutua did not just realize last night that they were traveling out of the country and they are supposed to appear before their Senate. They knew this for weeks. What was so difficult in doing, as Mr. Speaker, you will recall, because you and I serve in SBC, and many of the members that are in Senate Business Committee know that there are CSS that wrote early in advance and said, please readjust my appearance because for one reason or the other. And we had such cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I think we received a letter from the CS from Labour who informed us in good time, and therefore, as a House, we were able to plan and reschedule their appearance. But to write to this House, Mr. Speaker, barely 12 hours before our sitting to tell us that you're not appearing because you're globetrotting, Mr. Speaker, that cannot be taken kindly, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, even as you direct the Secretariat, Mr. Speaker, to write to these two CSs, you must express the displeasure of this House to them, Mr. Speaker. This is totally unacceptable. It needs to be firm. It needs to be decisive. They need to be put in the know, Mr. Speaker, to know that this House did not take kind to their appearance. In fact, on the day that they eventually appear here, Mr. Speaker, they should certainly not be allowed to answer any question before they first apologize to this House, Mr. Speaker, for wasting our time, Mr. Speaker. This is not proper, and this is not what is expected of a cabinet secretary who's serving in this administration, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, from the floor of this House, we want to tell CS Nakumincha, CS Alfred Mutua, that write to Parliament in good time, because Parliament does not work out of idleness, Mr. Speaker. These are issues that we say or we present before this House on behalf of the people that send members to this House, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. To fail to honor this kind of invitation, and the condition is very clear that it is only with the leave of the President. So because the Minister for Labor remembered that, she informed it at House Business Committee, which was quite okay. We don't care that Alfred Mutua, Minister, and Susan Nakumincha, Minister, are greenhorns in serving the executive, never having found their way into this Parliament. They might not be knowing the import of these issues. Mr. Speaker, the catchword is Parliament, not Senate or National Assembly. I therefore request you to liaise with your counterpart in the National Assembly so that Parliament takes a position that any minister who does not honor an invitation will lose the opportunity of business from their ministries being processed in Parliament until such a time that they convince us that they are apologetic. There are so many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, who are dying to serve this country as ministers. If people want to have joyriders, let them have those joyriders outside Parliament, outside the executive. The country requires to be pushed so that we can deliver where we are. We cannot do it when we have people who take trips as a priority to transacting government business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Naomba niende on record na wenzangu kuhusu hii tabia ya CSs. Bwana Speaker, hata kwa committees tuko na challenges kubwa sana. Kuna CS wa Treasury, tumemuita amekosa kuja kwa committee 5 times. Na kila wakati anasema ana shughuli. hiyo shughuli yako nayo kubwa kuliko kuserve wananchi wa Kenya ni gani? Na sasa nilikuwa nafikiri ni kwa committees tu peke yake. Sasa hata mbele yako Bwana Spika wanaleta tu huu mzaa. Hii iwe ni funzo kwa wale wengine, hawa wachukuliwa hatua kali kabisa, na CSS wajue wana jukumu ya kuja na kujibu maswali ya mambo ya wananchi. Kwa sababu Bwana Spika, kama wewe tunamuita kwa sababu ya retired teachers who have not even wale ambao hawajapata benefits zao. Bwana Spika, tunakuomba chukua hatua kali pamoja na secretariat ya Senate hii, ndio iwe funzo na wajue kwamba hatuchezi kuja kukaa hapa. Hata sisi hii ni kazi kama hiyo yao pia, na wanastahili kutupa heshima kama vile wanapatiwa heshima kule wako. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Tabitha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to support my leaders led by the ML in this shameful, very shameful contact by our ministers. The President has clearly stated in this country that the ministers should appear before Parliament. These ministers should know that they're not appearing before us as individuals. They are appearing before us because our key and first mandate in this country is what we call representation. We are the representatives of the people in this country. And when a whole minister who has an office that knows very well that he should be able to appear before Parliament, and has also not equally been appearing to the Health Committee in the Senate, then who is she in this country if she cannot appear before Parliament? We need answers, because the next question, the first question that when she'll appear will be, why don't you appear before Parliament? We need to know if in that job description that she signed stated that it will be in her choice either to appear or not to appear. We need to understand the job description of these ministers. Is it in their clause? Then hence they behave the way they want to behave. We have matters we needed to ask. We have business we needed the way they want to behave. We have matters we needed to ask. We have business we needed to conduct. We are here because of the representation that we do for this country. And if they're not going to be able to execute their mandate, they need to tell Kenyans, we are not in a position, because appearing in Parliament is one of their responsibilities. If that cannot be achieved, that we need answers to be able to give other Kenyans the opportunities to serve people in this country. You know the matters of health, how sensitive they are in this country. And the whole minister decides. It is wrong, Mr. Speaker. We cannot move forward like this. This is a day, a Wednesday day, we set for the Senate to abandon our committee sessions, to be able to sit with the ministers. We have a manifesto as Kenya Kwanza, to be able to achieve the plans that we set during our campaign period. We can only achieve when us, the representatives, sit with the executive, be able to question on the matters that need to be addressed. And then today somebody decides that they're not going to do that. Total disrespect. Total disrespect. Moving forward, Mr. Speaker, we need better than this. It is what it is, and we need better results. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Margaret Kamar.
Mr. Speaker, mine will be brief, because I and you served in the position of cabinet before, and the respect we had for the House was above everything else. It's a pity that CSS are not appearing as they have promised, because it's one thing to give an apology, and it's another one to give an apology when the House is already sitting, because we are wasting our whole morning because of them. I think it's very important that they get the message today that we are not going to. But, Mr. Speaker, there is still also the appearance of ministers in committees, and we have had this problem in the Committee of Education. We even have had a problem which has come to this House, which was forwarded to, to our committee, on payment of teachers of monies that were accrued between 1997 and the year 2000, I think, and 2. And the CS of Treasury was supposed to come. 3 times he has missed. We have fined him 500,000. He has not come. He has sent a message that he should be forgiven for the 500,000, but he has not arrived again. I think, Mr. Speaker, even as we conclude this discussion, you need to invoke that non-appearance fine, because it is good that we hold them also responsible on their own so that they feel the pinch, because Kenya is losing. Kenya is losing because if we don't address the issues that members have, issues that have come from, petitions that have come before us, it is really a waste of time. I remember yesterday as we were going through, taking stock in our committee, we discovered that we have performed only 50%. We have only addressed 50% of the questions, and all the others, 50% of them, 10 questions have not been responded to, let alone appearance. We have said respond so that if we find a need to invite you, we invite you. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with my leader of majority and all those who have contributed that it is very important that we make the statement clearly, but my suggestion is that we invoke the standing order that has a fine, so that we find them and they actually start to take responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to add my voice also to this very serious matter. Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 1 of our Constitution on the sovereignty of the people, Sub-Article 2 says, the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their elected representatives, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when a CS displays contempt to this House, that CS, Mr. Speaker, is actually directly challenging the sovereign power of the Kenyan people. And Mr. Speaker, it is the President himself who formally wrote to this House, Mr. Speaker, under your leadership, and requested us to amend our standing orders so that the ministers should appear before the House and answer questions. The intention of the President then, Mr. Speaker, and I think even up to now, is so that he is able to be accountable to the Kenyan people. That was the intention. Then, Mr. Speaker, the question that arises, therefore, is, if the head of state has been able to request the House to amend the standing orders, went ahead to do so, and the same CSS in the executive fails to appear before this House, Mr. Speaker, what then does that mean? Mr. Speaker, I agree with the leaders who have spoken earlier than me, that this is the moment this House should be able to take its position, Mr. Speaker, and be able to put strict measures to these failing ministers. Mr. Speaker, if you look at question number 18 in the standing order, in the order paper today, which was supposed to be answered by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, it is about Kenyans who are arrested in Uganda and charged in a court of law in Moroto district in Uganda for crossing over in search of pasture. Mr. Speaker, these are Kenyans who are already in custody in a foreign land. The CS was supposed to come and address Kenyans here, what steps he's taking. And it's not coming, Mr. Speaker. You can see the extent of the pain that is causing Kenyans by them failing, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to really agree with this, the leadership, that is the majority leader, that, Mr. Speaker, this should not be taken lightly, And Mr. Speaker, you've been able to guide. In this particular House, Mr. Speaker, if a member is out of order, you always expel members out of this order, Mr. Speaker, out of this sitting. What is a redress, Mr. Speaker, for the Kenyan people who are suffering, who needs to be addressed on matters health, matters security, matters water, and the ministers in charge failed to appear? I think, Mr. Speaker, the sanction that should be put in place should be such serious. And Mr. Speaker, I think this House has the power to discipline these ministers in a manner. And I want to agree with Kamar that perhaps, Mr. Speaker, for the first time, you may impose the payment of fine of $500,000 to these two ministers who have failed to appear before this House. So, Mr. Speaker, I support, and I think going forward, Mr. Speaker, again, as I conclude, it is even more worrying that not only are they failing to appear here, they even fail to appear before the committees. So, Mr. Speaker, in the chamber, they don't appear. In the committees, they don't appear. So, how will this House function, Mr. Speaker, in serving Kenyans? It is painful, and Mr. Speaker, I think you have the powers to impose certain serious penalties to these ministers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Dulo.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to give an info. First, let me say that there was a reason why the President and members of Parliament felt that ministers should come and appear before this House to answer certain questions that are actually affecting Kenyans. And I think for them to fail to appear before this House is disrespectful to this particular House and to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have provision and powers and privilege where ministers are actually supposed to be summoned. Failure to which they can also be charged a certain fee. And I think for us, we should start actually doing that so that these ministers can respect this country. Some of us, we woke up very early to come and actually listen to them so that we can represent our people. And for them just to say that we have gone for trips, that is not important compared to the challenges Kenyans are facing. Mr. Speaker, we need to take serious action against those ministers who actually give an excuse every now and then. I thank you.
Senator Mariam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, giving me this opportunity as I add my voice. Mr. Speaker, as ministers, as finance, as Vice Chair of Committee Health, we have not, we call Minister of Health 4 times, she has not appeared. I think, Mr. Speaker, CS must differentiate between this is not a private office. This is a public office, and they have to differentiate what is their role. And first priority is the role of Kenyans, what to do for Kenyans. As a health sector, we have to strengthen devolution Senate, because they have to treat them well together, the same as National Assembly and Senate are the same government armies, and they are supposed to treat them the same. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to someone, we summon them, but they have not responded. So that means that is disrespect. And when they are given these positions, they have took the oath that they will be ready to work with Kenyan and the MPs. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, this shows that there's a disrespect, and we have to summon them and give them fees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Seki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to contribute to this contribution by the Majority Leader on this issue of cabinet ministers not appearing before Senate. and even the committees. In our Committee of Trade, we have, Honorable Speaker, tried to invite the Minister for Trade, but he has never appeared to our committee. Equally, I'm also a member in the Committee of Education, and the Minister for Finance, Treasury, National Treasury, has always been absent on issues that involve citizens of this Republic of Kenya, teachers of this Republic of Kenya who are retired, and they have never received any pension for quite a number of years. And these are very pertinent issues, Honorable Speaker. We really need to have very punitive penalties to these cabinet ministers who are not appearing before this House, and even committees, because I don't think we were wrong to change the standing orders, and the President himself instructed